unmute us. So now we're on. We are continuing our work sessions on HRV policies. Today we're focusing on materials. So if you remember last meeting, we talked about a little bit about solar policies for solar panels, for fences and walls, and then for materials. And we decided we would take a look at some sample materials at this meeting. I have also begun some of the public outreach. I went to the Kanema Neighborhood Association meeting last week and didn't hear a whole lot of input yet, but let people know what we were doing, got a little bit of input, and invited folks to our open house, which is going to be before our next meeting, April 2nd. While we're gathering the input, we can continue to kind of discuss the items. And then I'll kind of bring everything to you in a summary of all the input that we've heard at our April meeting, April 23rd. John, we're gonna break around 8:40 or 8:45. So this is gonna be a quick little work session.
8:45?
Sorry,
6:45?
6:40, 6:45.
That would not be quick to me. I would leave.
Yeah, me too.
Did you say April 23rd or March?
So our March meeting is moved to April 2nd.
April 2nd.
And then we still have our April meeting, which is
the 23rd. So the 2nd and 23rd.
Yep.
In lieu of spring break.
Yep.
Roger. So we'll take this till 6:45.
Yes. If we need that much time. So really what I have in the agenda materials, some guidance from the National Park Service on substitute materials, some guidance, a link to replacement windows that meet the Secretary of Interior standards, and then some information on fiberglass windows and then on composite decking. And I have samples of different brands of composite decking, different kind of qualities. And then we've got some different types of fiber cement siding. And then I have some aluminum windows and a Fibrex window sample. I wasn't able to get my hands on any fiberglass windows, but we can kind of talk about these materials, and we can turn the mics on there. So if people want to kind of be looking at them and talking, we can still talk into the microphone so that they can pick it up on the video.
I think the Fibrex are the Anderson windows, I believe.
They are, yeah. It's an Anderson brand that is, it's kind of a wood substitute. So it's I think 40% wood, 60% plastic material.
Oh, I didn't even see those. What do you got? Oh, Marvin's.
Yeah. So
are any of those fiberglass or the aluminum?
Those are aluminum, but the one on the right, closest to you, is I was told more of for new construction. So you see the little flap.
Are all three of them Marvin?
No,
what's the one on the left?
Red one is I want to say it's Jeld-Wen.
Jeld-Wen?
But it's aluminum clad wood.
What is aluminum?
So all three are aluminum clad wood, and then those little swatches there, the white swatches.
Yeah.
That one is aluminum and one is fiberglass, so you can kind of compare those. So fiberglass is a kind of a substitute for the aluminum, and then the Anderson Fibrex material is a substitute for wood.
Bend this. Yeah.
Fiberglass can be, the Fibrex and the fiberglass can be painted.
So for windows, I will say the fiberglass windows can be painted. I mean, I know I'm ordering this massive amount of windows for what we're doing, but they're fiberglass, they're Milgard Essence fiberglass clad wood windows. But the fiberglass can be painted, like you said, various colors, whether it's bronze, black, or red, which kind of helps with the historical part of things instead of having to paint. Wood windows, aluminum clad windows are good. But the important thing is a lot of them can get either true divided light or very close to it. So all of those properties are great as far as windows go. What I think, I don't know. Are you wanting opinions on things?
Yeah, and we can kind of just have a discussion about it.
But like windows, we've already what you're kind of bringing up is about like Fibrex or fiberglass. Are those?
Yeah, so right now the policy says, first of all, if you have wood windows and you can repair them, right? If you can't, or if you have we have some historic homes that, 10 years ago, somebody illegally replaced the windows with vinyl.
Sure.
So when those vinyl windows fail, what can they replace them with now? So maybe we would be willing to accept fiberglass or aluminum clad or this Fibrex type. So there are lots of different kind of circumstances where it might be acceptable to have a substitute to wood. But the current policies allow wood and aluminum clad wood only. And then anything else has to come to the board for approval. So, we can kind of expand that if we want to.
But if we expand that, do we have to have that approved by the board, or if we say, hey, Fibrex and fiberglass can be included, how do we?
We can amend the policy.
Okay.
So as part of this policy update, we can amend the policy to say when Fibrex and fiberglass are appropriate without board review.
Is it the same for contributing homes and new construction right now?
So the policies apply only to alterations to historic structures. So the policies apply to any structure in Kenema because it's a National Register district. So throughout the district, no matter if you have a contributing or non-contributing structure, policy applies to you. And that's kind of where it gets tricky because, there are lots of historic homes in Kenema, but then there are also the non-contributing structures. Like, do we need to hold them to the same standard or not? Designated structures in McLaughlin, only designated structures, and then landmarks outside of districts. That's what the HRB policies apply to. So the policy number 10 for windows currently says, original wood windows should be retained and repaired whenever possible. Replacement of windows should be with in-kind materials. It actually doesn't say exterior alteration. It actually doesn't say aluminum clad wood, but I think that we have
before many years.
Yeah.
On windows, I would say those other ones would be great. If you talk about decking, that's a whole nother story. I mean, if we're jumping around, but.
Yeah, so I think for windows, we can also consider like the front facade of a home versus the sides and the rear. Like Grant said, non-contributing versus contributing in Kenema. And then we can also consider maybe accessory structures different from the primary structure if we want to.
I have a question.
Come on up.
I thought in the policy, when we built our house, we went through that, and I think the policies does say you can have Marvin fiberglass wood windows.
For new construction.
For new construction, right?
Yeah. So for new construction, we have allowed fiberglass windows. I think we've talked about Marvin Integrity as the level of quality. So there are other brands that would meet that probably, but Marvin Integrity was the example.
Yeah, that's the one they specify. The problem with Marvin Integrity is they only come with 4 colors in that kind of window.
And I think other brands have come up and certainly raised the bar with quality and colors.
Like the one you said, Milgard Essence.
Milgard Essence.
We
yeah.
used that, we submitted the engineering drawings for the window and it matched Marvin, and it come with a whole bunch of different colors.
Whole bunch of colors, and then you can pick either pine or fir on the interior, and
Right, yeah.
yeah.
So, new construction, I think, does specify what type window you have to use or
I
specify.
think new does. I don't think old does.
I don't think so either. Thank you.
Yeah. And then you'd mentioned, replacing kind. But if you're saying like 10 years ago, someone has vinyl,
Right.
you could say,
You don't want
you're replacing in kind with vinyl. That's not, you know what I mean?
Right.
So that could be a problem. I don't remember if that's come up before, but anyway.
Well, one example, it's a little different than that, but there's like a 60s or 70s era apartment building in Kenema. They originally had aluminum slider windows.
Yeah.
They wanted to replace them, and they came to the board. The board approved vinyl in that situation. So, that was an example of, something outside of the policies that had to come to the board.
Right,
Which
that
I think
makes sense.
It makes sense,
Yeah.
right? So if, right now, anything outside of wood essentially and matching exactly the historic window has to come to the board.
Yeah. Got it. I've read these articles on this old house, on both. Just because I get that. Anything else, or are we just random?
We can be random.
The decking, there's nothing there that I would ever amend to the policy to be approved, in my opinion. That stuff gets marketed to everyone so heavily, but yet it still needs to be treated. It still warps, it still cups, and it still fades. And people think that getting this stuff and you putting it on a historic house is going to save them money and it's less maintenance and blah, blah, blah. It's nothing further from the truth, from experience. And that product's more expensive. So that's, as far as bringing that into the policy, I don't know. You can't really, on an old house, when I look at that, you can't say that's just as good as putting a fir down, because people think, fir is so expensive and hard to maintain. But then that becomes an issue like on a back deck. Is it okay to put it in the back?
Right, that's a question.
And it could be, I don't know what the policy is on decking, but
we don't have a specific policy on decks, but it's
or
basically
porches, I guess I should say.
porches, right? So it's that in-kind materials. So if the house is made, if all the materials on the house are wood, then you have to use wood.
Right. Yeah, because I think did we have a porch recently where they did something different, or they caulked everything they wanted money to fix or something, but
And they were using wood for that.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think if it came down to it, if somebody came before the board and had a house from the 20s or the teens with fir and they want to replace it with that, they'd have to come before the board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that would.
Yeah, I agree on the decking, that would be a special approval only type of.
Yeah.
So pay the $50, come to the board, ask for permission.
Yeah, because it could be a case by case. If they come with that, for just me, it would be a resounding no. Because it's not historic. It doesn't have the character, integrity of, the fir porches that are perpendicular to the house that come out,
Mm-hmm.
Did you have something on the underneath, or what? I can't remember what it.
We did a couple different things. Originally, the board approved, since we had living space underneath the deck, we had a plywood with a membrane over top, which I've had in previous homes. I didn't like that, but the board approved it. But we did change it, and the board approved the new Trex deck. But our house is so far off the road, and the deck is so high you can't see it.
out of sight.
But we left our porch stairs that's seeable from the thing with
Cedar?
wood.
Yeah.
And then underneath the deck, since it's pressure treated wood, all those slats like this underneath the deck were all treated with, those are hardy plank painted white.
Oh,
So you
Gotcha.
can't see it, but the deck is too high up.
Well, and
Sure.
your new construction as well,
Yeah,
so,
we're new construction.
so I think that's, that's maybe where, you might add some caveats to the
Sure.
materials, is like if it's a non-contributing structure or if it's new construction, after a certain year or something in Kenema, that this kind of material might be appropriate.
Got it.
And our decks are completely covered, so they won't get sun or rain on, because the porch was over top of them. so
Sure, that
they
would
should
help a
last.
lot.
And then, for siding,
Yeah,
I've got some hardy board, which is fiber cement siding. Generally for new construction, we allow fiber cement and we say it has to be smooth because there's like the wood grain look.
yep,
And so the examples that are there, there's a thicker piece that
Yeah.
is meant to resemble wood a little bit more because it's thicker, it matches the thickness of wood siding typically. And then the thinner boards are there as well. And so we've never, for new construction, we've never specified you have to use the thicker ones or the thinner ones. We
Right.
just say smooth, hardy plank. So again, for the policies, maybe for non-contributing structures or for like accessory buildings, the board might consider whether this hardy plank or fiber cement is appropriate.
yeah, because it's always been that hardy smooth, but the thicker stuff that's come out gives a little deeper reveal to like some older, old siding that if somebody had a house with the older siding, the thicker, taller, that could be an option for replacement on a side or something that would match it if they didn't want to use wood, kind of a thing.
And then there's fiber cement shingle and things like that as well.
The only thing about the shingles is there's a couple of houses by the old high school on Jackson that we approved some years ago where the guy built like 3 or 4 homes. And I know we approved the hardy cement and then the shingles. He had areas where there's shingles. But we've never ever approved, the kind of shake that goes up and down, the hardy up and down instead of straight across. And that guy put the up and down stuff. And I remember calling Christina saying, that dude's putting that up, and I don't think that's what we approved. And she didn't have anything in the documents on it, and he did it. And
Right.
it just doesn't, I would never approve that
Right.
as far as shingles, but the hardy shingles work fine. Just not the staggered kind, because
Yeah.
that's just not,
And that was on new construction as well.
yeah.
I don't have a feel for I haven't looked at it in a long time, what the cost difference between wood and a hardy plank would be.
Oh, for like a cedar shingle? Or are you talking,
Right, if for someone replacing, on a contributing home.
like a gable in and there's cedar and they want to replace it with
Yeah,
hardy?
you're right, it's compared to replacing it with like materials of
Cost-wise?
Yeah.
The hardy would be less.
I just don't know how much less if it's,
The hardy shingles are expensive, but the labor part is less because you can put up panels. But then
Right.
cedar's, I think, even far away more than the hardy, and it's more labor intensive. I think overall cedar's more expensive.
right,
But it has a much better look. It looks like
Sure.
cedar. So cedar would be
'Cause I wanna-
more expensive.
set policies that are reasonable, not forcing people to incur costs that are for certain things that might be extreme.
Right.
For only a marginal benefit,
Right, if it's like right in here, you would be more inclined to say, keep it authentic.
Right,
If it's something like this and the cedar's up here,
Yeah,
you're saying
exactly.
you'd be more inclined to
Let
say, go
them-
ahead and do the hardy if it saves you cost.
if it makes a big difference, then,
Sure.
And the appearance.
The visual is negligible is what you're, yeah,
If it's not a huge,
sure. Got it.
Whereas like on the decking, where it's not really cheaper or more cost effective, anything like that, then I'm not very inclined to say use an alternative material.
I would agree. For sure. Well, is that enough said that you want to talk about preservation awards, or you want to keep going?
Yeah, no, that's fine. And we have the April 2nd meeting where we can continue kind of discussing some of this.
Sure.
I'm continuously finding more resources. So I shared some of the Secretary of Interior guidance with you, but I keep finding more stuff. So I will attach it, I'll share it with you, and we'll put it on the next agenda too, so you can just have more.
But it's super to have the stuff to look at.
Yeah.
This stuff to say instead of talking in the abstract.
Right.
It's awesome.
I think next meeting, I'd like to talk a little bit about the dimensions. So we talk about, recessed windows and that, if a window has to match in the design, not just the material. So, it's kind of hard to do that. You can do custom windows, but sometimes, these products are more, like they have that depth to them, and then sometimes they don't. And so we can potentially look at specifying some sort of minimum, sill depth or things like that.
Then you get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
But like the red window, that's a picture window. The reveal on that's much different than these others that are either
Right.
double or single hung, which create more depth.
Right.
Where that looks more like almost like a vinyl window because of the way the trim is.
Right.
But it's also just a different window. Yeah. Paul.
Come on.
Yeah.
Thank you. Paul Edgar, Kanema. I would like to invite any of you that would like to look at some of the windows when I rebuilt my house. And I used a company called Wooddale Windows. And they're all wood, and they're 4/4 light, double hung. I did a lot of types of things because I went a little over budget, $250,000 in rebuilding. I was originally planning for 100, and it went a little over double. But I didn't want to shortchange the glass, the eyes of a historic building. And I sometimes you can take a look at it. All of the windows on the street side are all imitations. I took one of the original windows to Wooddale's and said, just give me a whole bunch like this, but I want double pane and I want them to look authentic. And let's try to, I pulled out some stuff, but it's an invitation in a sense to say, yes, we can do some things and save money. And I just would, the whole idea of employing as much creativity as we can, but maintaining authenticity in how you do it, so that buildings that are historic, you do the best you can do. On new construction, then this is where this Hardie and some of this other stuff becomes a really relevant factor. And I will tell you, I didn't do everything perfect. I didn't do everything that
Sure.
might be everyone would agree to. But I was in the middle of a house that I had to lift off the foundation, and boy, when I did that, I severed it from the world. And it was a major. But again, this is about learning and seeing what could be done. Also wanted to give this to you guys, and this is this document that was done, and I'd like it to be part of thinking. And the Historic Preservation League of Oregon is also known as Restore Oregon. But in that document, this is focusing on new construction. What do you do in National Register districts? We're not talking about necessarily McLaughlin Conservation District. This is targeted in giving principles that should be, that they brought all these experts from the state of Oregon all together, and they had this round table, and they created principles And there's a great deal of difference between Kanema as a National Register district and a conservation district. And they get into these principles of what they should be and what we should be talking about. And this was done for the state of Oregon, and it was to target National Register districts. And so it's a document that is important as a guidelines for some of the changes or consideration we could. And the back 2 pages of it, they list off these principles in one after another right down the line. And I've used them many times when I've tried to argue positions on preservation. And I think that they're pertinent, but they are part of saying, looking at something greater than just the buildings, because we're talking about the whole district and the principles that we have to employ within the district.
Thanks,
Thank
Paul.
you.
Okay, appreciate it. Do you want to talk about awards real quick? Or
Yeah,
Okay, super fast.
So every May is Preservation Month. We give out a Ruth McBride Powers Award to someone who's done a great job with preserving the building. Generally, I think the city has won a few of the last few years, a couple of the last awards, and so we want to spread the love. So just if you have any, if you know of any like restoration or rehabilitation work that's been going on, and it just is a really shining example of good preservation work, let me know. I want to nominate anyone, and then the board will vote on the awardee at our next meeting, probably.
Okay. Well, then we'll adjourn until 7.
Wonderful.
All right.